Hi, my loves. Welcome to the first episode of 2025. And we really felt like there would be no better topic to cover today than this theory that we have to know who we are and know what we want. And it sounds crazy to even say that those things are ludicrous because even the spiritual industry buys into those things. Even the spiritual industry just gives you a better answer to who you are and what you want. And so it does provide us some relief. But I was thinking about this so much over the holidays about what is so transformational about human design is that you are not in the game and the torture of who am I, what do I want, and if I just find the answer I'll be okay, because that's a game that we construct that creates so much suffering for us over the course of our lives. Because even if you get the first thing you want, then there's the next thing, and then there's another thing you want to become. The promise with human design is that you exit out of the game altogether. And that's what's so magical about it, is that your authentic self is already waiting for you to just be it in every moment. And if we can think about timeline splits, right? If we can think about multiple roads we can go down in any moment, there's always this other one, which is just being what we've got used to calling the unthought through self, the natural, organic self. And really being your real self is not then this game of trying to figure out what it is and trying to put so much attention on the traumas, the drama, the codependency, the people pleasing, the staying stuck, the not believing in ourselves. Because what happens every time we think about that is we still energize that as a part of what we are. And of course, it is a part of what we are, but how we undo it is not necessarily just by thinking about it more. How we undo it is, oh, I see the temptation for me to people please in this moment, and I'm just going to do the very unfucking comfortable thing of not people pleasing, even though it might feel like, oh my God, there's going to be crickets in the room, or it's going to feel like this person temporarily doesn't like me, or is not as impressed with me as they normally are, or whatever the story is. So it's literally about pulling the plugs out of our not self. We talk about the not self in human design is everything that you've picked up along the way to become your persona, your shell, from your conditioning, from your internal shoulds, from the way that the world tells all of us we need to be in order to survive and thrive. So, what I want to offer, if you are someone who feels like you have a lot of mental pressure because you don't know necessarily what you want, you maybe would rather not know and be just led to something that the universe knows for you instead, which is always going to be far greater than our ideas of what we want. Or if you're like, I don't know what parts of me I want to shed or unbecome, but I also feel like, oh my God, I have to have an answer because otherwise it means I'm going to stay the same and I'm going to have an equal year to what I had last year. And does that mean I'm not moving ahead? And does that mean I'm not spiritual? None of that is true. The people that really change are people who confront the ego death of getting to a place in our life where we just don't feel as tempted by the people pleasing, the not self, the shoulding, the fronting, the personaing, the acting stronger than we are, the hiding our emotions. When any of those things, it dawns on you one day that it's just not as rewarding to you as just trying to actually make the most of this one thing, this incredible thing called a life where you just deserve to be absolutely radiant in your essence every day and being true to you and treating yourself respectfully by being true to you. It's all of a sudden like when that day comes, and likely with many of us, we have many of those days that come in increments, right? But you will just reach a point where you're like, let me just see if I don't people please in this moment. And so I want to offer this to us today because the fundamental magic of human design is you don't have to know your conditioning. You just have to connect more and more to the you that you really are. And how you do that is you witness yourself in the moment and you say, what would be my natural response to this? What would I actually what would come to me to say instead of me thinking about what to say or talking myself into this decision? What is my actual decision? And that is scary because we live in a world where we have been told that security and thriving only comes from thinking about everything in advance and coming up with a master plan. But also, what that has done is that has made us feel very untrusting of living from our hearts, from our natural self. And so, not only are we overly trusting of the overthinking and the planning, but we don't know how to trust the universe because we've never tried. We don't know that honoring our real selves and doing what we actually feel like doing and saying what we actually feel like meaning is safe. Like, we just don't have evidence. And so, of course, it's scary. And I reason I say that is because I want you to know that because you don't trust the universe doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. It doesn't mean that you are missing this, like, unbelievably strong spiritual trust muscle that everyone else who's spiritual needs to have. It's simply that none of us have gathered enough evidence yet to tell us, oh, wow, my heart actually doesn't lead me wrong. But it's like, if you've never gotten on a plane before, you're going to be terrified of flying. If you've never, the same with any of us. If we were getting on a spaceship tomorrow, we'd be bricking ourselves, right? So it's the same thing. If we don't know how to trust in our hearts, of course, living from your heart is scary. Of course, saying what you actually feel is going to feel like you have some kind of like weirdo freak gene in you, right? You're going to feel like you don't belong. You're going to feel like people are going to judge you. None of those feelings are wrong, and none of those feelings are a sign that should actually mean that you shouldn't do what you're about to do. So this is going to be our work this year, and we're going to talk about this so much more. The simple decision to say what you feel like saying and do what you feel like doing is actually much more transformative than just coming up with a list of goals and aiming towards those. And it's actually much more difficult, but it's also more doable. And I'll tell you why, because it completely gets rid of any overthinking, any controlling, any anxiety, and the universe comes and moves through you because you are showing up as a person who is true to themselves, and the universe is thirsty this year for people who are true to themselves. These are the people that are going to get rewarded beyond their small minds, are beyond what our small minds can make up as a list. Like, the universe is going, oh, that's so cute. You want to like double your business, right? But what the other promise is that not only can we have bigger, sweeter rewards in terms of like the things we all get taught to want, right? But think about what's really precious here, which is your time here, which is your experience of life here. You and me, Taylor, have spoken about how losing someone close to us both last year really woke us up to how precious life is. And yes, you want all of those things, but you also want to be a person that you like whilst you get all those things, whilst you're on the way to those things, and whilst you're enjoying those things. Because if you are a person who is at peace, if you are a person who is, quick to laugh because you're unburdened, right, by all the muck and the stuff, and you are actually fully taking in all the colors more deeply around you of life because you are your real self. You are not being this other thing that isn't you the whole time. And I always think about, this list some of you have probably seen before, the top 5 regrets of the dying. And I always think, God, the biggest shame would be to look back and be like, why wasn't I just brave enough to just do life my way? So I think this is going to be a big topic that we're going to cover this year. And this matters to me more, our joy of our daily experience and us feeling like we are the people we really are, as silly as that sounds, and that we don't need to blunt or soften our individuality is the main focus of what we're going to try and bring you this year. And we're going to make it so easy for you to listen to your strategy and authority, because those are the ways that you get there. But I also want to drill down that the dare of this lifetime is, can you be your most individual self? And in doing so, prove that all the fears that our minds and society tells us come with being our individual self, which is you won't be liked, it won't be a good type of self, you are inherently bad, so your nature can't be trusted, you're not going to be successful, you're not going to be married, you're not going to be wealthy, you're not going to be, you're not going to be able to have kids, you're not going to be smart, you're not going to be loved, you're not going to be popular, you're not going to be any of the fill in your own story. Can you dare to see that your individual nature is actually beautiful, because that is the part of you, and only that part of you is the part that comes from the divine. And therefore, that is the part that we absolutely effing should be focusing on energizing. And what we need to dial down the volume on is all the other stuff that we contort around to try to micromanage our positions and our standings and where we're going in life instead.
And I actually have a really good example from my own life that might seem silly, but ended up not being silly, where I was going on this journey for myself of, even if there's things that I do in my life that other people like me for, it's more important to me now that I like being me. And so in the past, I've been the person who is the first person on the dance floor. I'm predicted to be the bubbly energy bringer to a party. Okay. And this was something that kept coming up for me as, is this coming natural to me? Am I getting out there and dancing around and putting on a show because that's me? Or is it because people think I'm fun because I do that? And so not everybody has to do it this way, but for me, I started to really pull back on that because this experiment is really important to me. Actually liking myself is really important to me. And I was like, I'm willing to just like kind of be boring for a second to see if I'm in these social settings and there's like a natural draw for me to get up and be on the dance floor or be the center of attention. And I found that, of course, there's times when I do enjoy that, but I found that actually most of the time it was a performative way of being for me because I got admiration and acknowledgement and likability from it. And now I've talked to you about this, that I find myself now in social settings more. I'm like sitting on the outskirts in these like one-on-one conversations with people and like getting into this like little zone with each person and just like kind of lily padding around the room. And that to me is feeding me more than anything, any dancing, performing, bringing the party, bringing the energy has ever brought to me.
As so many things I want to point out there. The first one is that, yes, it's this time. And I think everyone in the cluster is feeling this now, is like, it's more important for us to actually enjoy who we are. I love the way you put that. And it's more important that we actually try and make this life what it promises it can be. If all we have to do is be our real selves, it can be way bigger. But I also love that this is such a specific example of how conditioning gets into all of us. Like, conditioning has told us that fun looks a certain way. And also, you probably got praised for it once. And then what we do is we say, okay, well, I'm just going to rinse and repeat. Whereas actually what you're doing is you're living in the nuance, because you're saying to yourself, you're not saying that's not me. You're saying, listen, if there's a day that the music's really good and I'm in the mood, of course I'll be first on the dance floor, but that's not my personality. Like, those are just things we choose to do as human beings. We don't have to make bungee jumping our whole entire personality. We don't have to make a dance floor our whole entire personality. And also this is where human design comes in, right? Because knowing what your sort of North Star gifts and inclinations were, and how we feel our best when we're letting our natural essence come out of us, like, it makes absolute sense, knowing your chart, that going deep and listening to people and talking with people and having those one-on-ones would feed someone. But society is never going to say that that's the norm, and so you've gone off path in that way and reap the rewards. And I want people to know, like, imagine if you're doing 100 of those in a year, how different your life becomes. And again, it's not measured necessarily by the new house, the new this, the new that. It's like, oh, this like peace and this safety and this more experience of love and this deepening of my current relationships. And just the moments that feel like nothing, that are in between the sort of highlights, are just sweeter and juicier and lovelier. And we've spoken together about many different places where, like, you know, the parts in between are not the ones where we need to numb out of and look to the next high point of our life because we think that's going to define and make us happy. Like, it's literally just you in a place where you normally were showing up as a contorted version, being like, oh, let me see if I can uncontort, if I can unwriggle this conditioning in this moment, and look how much that's going to compound. Now you have a whole new way of knowing how you like to extract some juiciness out of life in a specific scenario that happens a lot, right? A social setting.
Yeah, and too, I think just pointing out there that this isn't the easiest process in the world, because especially when you start to kind of lean into new behaviors, the people around you that maybe loved you and enjoyed spending time with you for those things, it is a little bit like jolting for them, where they're like, oh, Taylor, aren't you going to get up there? Oh, Taylor, aren't you going to? And when you're not doing that, they have to almost re-meet you. And that's okay. I think that we have to be okay with that in life. And the people that we love is re-meeting each other over the
Mm-hmm.
course of our lives, because it gives us permission and them permission to actually change. Because
Mm-hmm.
there's so many things about the people that you love that they are probably being because they're getting love for it, but it's not really them.
100%. And I also think sometimes it's not that deep, in the sense that if someone says to you in this example, are you not dancing? Of course, the person whose own persona was dependent on you doing that for them is going to not like it. So, but then you're actually doing, in that situation, you're actually doing them a favor because you're not energizing their distorted version of self. But to most people, they're just used to seeing you in a certain way, and it's a casual, it's just like a casual remark, or it's just like automatic. Like, I think a lot of our words are just kind of like knee jerk word, like vomit, or word anxiety, or just noticing something. It's not that deep. So it might just be someone who's like, oh, you're not getting up and dancing. Like, why are you not getting up? Is the music bad? Who knows why they're asking you, right? So a lot of the time, what we think is resistance is just people also seeing you undistorting, right? And like we said, if people really are not upset with it, then it actually is a realignment. As long as you're being true to yourself and you're not doing it in a reactive way, then actually it is actually better for everyone else. We always say here that we live in a win-win-win universe, and so your alignment actually grooves other people around you into more of their alignment, and also the universe becomes more aligned too. So there is no, oh, if I win then it's selfish, if I am true to myself then other people lose. That does not happen. It's just that the initial rejigging of energies and readjustment sometimes is a little wriggly, and that's fine.
Right. And when I first met you, I think like a couple years ago, and I spent time with your family, I was like so blown away. One of my favorite things was just the deepness of conversation that you guys have. And that was something that I felt like I was lacking in my life. And I had no idea that it was because I was supposed to be the person that could be, you know, kicking that off. And over the past couple years, because I've started to peel back on my persona and that's important to me, that feels like a part of me to sit in conversation with people. And now I'm the deepness of conversations I'm having with people that have been in my life my entire life that I've never had that with are happening because I stopped being away in social settings that I it wasn't natural to me.
And that's what we don't realize, is that we block so many good things that are meant to be ours, that we don't even necessarily, we don't even know all of them, right? We don't even know what all of them are. Like, you could have spent ages around your family and thought it was great, and never needed to have, never known that you needed to have good conversations, but you naturally would have then all of a sudden been surprised and delighted when it showed up, because you just awakened it in your reality by being your real self. And that's really the promise that I want all of us to remember now, is like, we don't have to know what we want or what's best for us. There are things that make us deliriously happy more than anything else. There's a reason why, you know, someone's deep conversation is someone else's, you know, something else. Fill in the blanks: reading, exercising, bungee jumping, bird watching, any of those things. And so you will get yourself there. Your joy will find you there, because let's bring it back to human design for a second. What human design says is that each of us have a magnet inside of us. It's called the magnetic monopole. What does that mean? It's a magnet with only one pole. So when you've done like magnets in physics at school, there was always a plus and a minus side of a magnet. Our magnet only has one side of it, and it is always trying to get us towards our destiny. It is driving us towards our destiny. So we have three parts inside of us. We have this magnet, which is the car. The car is always trying to go towards the destination. The second part of us is our minds, right? And our minds are always trying to control. The third part of us is us. It's our spirit. It's our soul experiencing this ride in the car. It's the passenger. So if we take the mind out of the way and kind of realize that the car is a self-driving car, then we do just get to sit back and watch the amazing things that come along the road as we're passing by the road. And that's really why this is important, is because the magnet is magnetizing. The magnet is magneting all the time. It's just a degree of how much we are getting in the way by staying our persona, because we never fully can snuff out the power of that magnet, obviously, but we sure as hell cloud the experience, and we slow it down, and we miss half the shit that we're supposed to see. And therefore, we don't see an opportunity when it smacks us in the face, because we think it's something annoying, or we think it's not part of the thing we think we need to get what we think we want, which is maybe not even what we want, but it's been given to us by someone else. All of that is what we need to kill off. And so I'm going to bring us back to this quote that has since been attributed to many people like Osho and Rumi and God knows who else, but it was the first reel we ever made 5-6 years ago, I think. Now, I said it on a podcast, which is, perhaps the journey of becoming your real self is not about becoming anything, but about unbecoming everything you were told to be in the first place. So as we kick off the year, it's really important to remember, no, your mind is not going to get a high off the not knowing. Your mind gets off on lists and wants and dream vision boards, and all of that stuff is fun, and carry on doing it. But just know that the subtle, sobering work of, I am just going to be there for me this year in a way that I haven't prioritized before as the most important thing, which is being my unthought through self in this moment, without escaping the moment by trying to figure out what that ultimately looks like. Who is my higher self? What's my real self going to say tomorrow? But like, oh, this moment is where the universe wants me to be right now. So instead of trying to dissociate from it by going into my head, why don't I actually see how much magic can be unfurled and extracted from this moment if I just be my unthought through self? And my unthought through self sometimes is going to say things that surprise me, and sometimes it's going to say things that make me feel terrified for my likability and my safety. But at this point, life is too freaking precious to do it the other way, because it's costing us too much.
And also, the wants that you come up with from your mind can only ever pull from either something that it is pulling from your actual soul, like a true soul want, or pull from things it's seen outside of itself that it thinks it should want. So you might accidentally stumble on some soul wants, but you actually don't have to know mentally what you want in order to get what your soul wants. Because
Yeah.
your soul knows all the time. Like you don't need to be able to write it down, and you don't even need to be able to articulate it.
It's exactly that. So, some people know from 3 years old they're meant to do this. Does that mean they get there more than people who at 62 wake up and decide to start? There was a reel going around Instagram the other day, like all these people that started doing their thing later on in life. For some people, it works for their path, that the universe plants it in your conscious mind very clearly. And some other people, it's not. But that has no correlation or causation to how likely you are to have a wonderful life. And the unknown is a scary place for all of us. So, yes, some of us have some glimpses of things in some points of the way, but just because you're not getting glimpses, it doesn't mean you're not in charge. And really what we're supposed to be in charge of is mastering self, not knowing all the rules of life and knowing all the secrets of life and knowing how things are going to pan out. It's, what we don't need to make sense of life. We need to have sense of self in every part of life, because especially as the world moves more quantum than it moves matter focused, there is a reason we are going to see how much more of an impact self has on reality than reality has on us. So if you focus on the power source that is, which is self, we don't understand that reality is such a fragile structure that shape shifts and adjusts according to the viewer, right? It's only from our point of attention, our locus, and our point of attraction that we walk into the room and it looks the same way that it did yesterday, or that we see our partner show up differently. It's all an inside job. And that's what they mean, is that scientifically, atoms are genuinely rearranging themselves around you based on the frequency that you're putting out. So that's why we have to focus on self more. But the dare of the lifetime, and the reason why this is the work of a warrior, is because at the same time, because of the law of polarity, even though the truth is the more you focus on self, the more the outside shifts, the opposite has also become more tempting, meaning everyone and the outside voices have never been louder and never been more conditioning and never been more homogenizing. Like, it seems like everyone in you can tell yourself the story now. Anyone on the planet can say, oh, everyone's doing this. And really all it is your algorithm kind of showing you more of the same. And so you think the world is actually much narrower and more similar than it actually really is, because there's so much variety outside of our eyes. But you see how that sort of opposite force that is light, but it's light in disguise, says, are you sure you don't want to be making an ins and outs list for 2025? Are you sure you shouldn't be strength training for longevity? Sorry, I have a bugbear about that one. I use that one a lot, but like, it comes to mind so much. Are you sure you don't want to be, getting into watching this movie that everyone's watching? Like, it's such a simple example. Everyone is into watching Wicked. I just know that there's no draw inside of me naturally to watch it. And the same with It Ends With Us. I just never wanted to watch it. Does that mean it's bad? Absolutely not. It just means it's not supposed to be in my experience of life today. Maybe I'll watch it in 20 years' time, and that will be the perfect day that I'm supposed to watch it. But that's all it is that we get to shape our reality way more than we think. But the temptation to think that you cannot shape it is stronger than ever before. And this is where we are going to embolden each other and remind each other as this year goes on. If you guys agree and want to come along for the ride, it's all self-directed. It is all self-focused, and everything outside of us is so much less concrete and fixed than we think it is. What we are going to see this year, if you have the app and you've listened to the 2025 workshop, you've heard me say this in there before, and if you haven't, I encourage you to go listen to it, that we're going to understand that matter is so much more light and fluid and not physical and not real than we thought it was. Like, it's all just like an illusion, in the same way that a dream feels like an illusion. Like, nothing of it is going to feel heavy or containing to us, in the good ways and the sometimes challenging ways. So we are going to be in a great position if we remember that it is all about shaking off the temptations in every moment to be our persona, so we can groove and energize more the path of the real self. And so again, it's not about having to attack our conditioning and attack our wounds and attack our traumas necessarily directly. It's just about, when you dial up the volume by giving the energy in every moment more to your real organic self, you automatically snuff out the amount of times you've energized being your not self. And then that's how all of those things, maybe those old things that seem to have such a hold over you, they just don't anymore, because you've taken their power away from them, which is you acting according to the way they want you to act. And then it's as simple as that. You shine on a light on the darkness, and the darkness ceases to exist.